As my dear friend Emily Young exclaimed to me recently, Gil Jacobs is a national treasure. How to even introduce this beloved man? What we have before us is an iconoclast of the highest caliber in a class unto himself. Gil has been a master teacher to so many of us. And in fact, Gil was actually an English teacher before he got into tissue cleansing, before he was called to his destined life of immeasurable service, awakening so many of us to the great boon of tissue cleansing and the enlivened life experience that goes with it. In addition to being the godfather of tissue cleansing, Gil Jacobs is also father to two beautiful adult daughters, Jenny and Jade. Gil's impact on the health community is so remarkable and yet has been so understated. The lives he has touched, or better stated, the lives he has saved, is the stuff of legends. My life turned around the moment I read an interview with Gil in 2000 in a book by Paul Nissen called The Raw Life. There were many interviews with raw foodists in this book, but only one of the featured interviews captured my attention. It stood out like a beacon and beckoned me to Gil Jacobs. I immediately made a beeline to Gil's colon hydrotherapy clinic, which was called Chakra 17 on 34th Street and the East River in Manhattan. This appointment changed the course of my life forever. The result of that session pulled back the veil for me on what health, beauty, and happiness are truly all about. Nothing could have prepared me for those months that would follow, as I would grow to more closely learn Gil's philosophy. Simply put, Gil's work saved my life. As I like to joke, I attached myself to Gil like Velcro, gleaning all he so generously shared with me about the mechanics of tissue cleansing. That was 24 years ago. One of the most important things you need to know about Gil is that he is absolutely devoted to the cleansing work and devoted to healing all who find him. Gil's mission has been to empower each person by unblocking them from their accumulated waste matter so they could feel the great natural high of life. Gil is a treasure and a saint, a teacher and a healer like no other. So we will sit in the glow of this peerless iconoclast now. Gil, thank you ever so dearly, both for the boon of magic you brought to my life nearly a quarter of a century ago, bestowing light and rebirth to my darkness and pain, and for taking the time to speak with our Pure Power community today. Welcome, Gil.
Thank you, Hern. I'm very moved and flattered. Very moved and flattered. Very happy to be here. I love the interactions with people, to see where people are, and just to see, I kind of live in my own section of the universe. So this is always exciting to me because I see where younger people getting into the health, what I call progressive health world, just where they are. And this is important now. This is important now, I think, more than ever, because if you look at the mainstream health world, the wellness world, as it calls itself, there's some real bad information being put out. We have this group of MDs called carnivore doctors who are not only telling people to eat proteins, but they're basically telling people to eat exclusively animal proteins. Like this 30-30-30 thing, have you heard of this? It's a bunch of doctors telling people to wake up at 8 a.m. If you're asleep, wake up to an alarm clock and have 30 grams of animal protein. It has to be 8 o'clock, and then they attach all this scientific stuff as to why. Then you do it again right before you go to bed and once in the middle of the day. And it has to be land animal protein as well. So there's so much misinformation right now that for people in your group, they're very important, because as Galileo said, the truth is always amidst the minority. So people who understand the health, the cleansing life as we do it, it's really important, because the sway out in the general public, a lot of whom want to get healthy, but they're being really misguided. Protein, animal flesh, grass-fed meats, we hear this term, which never existed, macronutrients. meaning carbohydrate, protein, fat. Get enough of these three things. It's a lifestyle that's encouraging overeating. So the work you're doing now with a group like this is far more important than it ever was, because it's a beacon of truth amidst a desert of insanity. And because the health world now, I think, is at its most misbegotten in terms of the general public. You got people thinking drugs, metformin and ivermectin and Special K or health stuff. When did this happen? When did pharmaceuticals become health products? And then you have the high animal fat diet and hooking machines up to your head. These people who call themselves biohackers, hooking machines up, and out come these polysyllabic words, telomeres and all this stuff. Do all those things. Keep your barrel full. Let me know how that works for you. So the genius of the simplicity of what you're doing is really more important now than it probably ever was, because it has to balance the insanity. So a group like this is really important. And for everyone out there that has had success with this through working with Natalia, understand that as you meet people, not by preaching or going off that way, but let them feel your warmth, your love, your excellence, your peace, your ease. I got that from this fabulous person here who came in to set this up. There's just such a joy and a gratitude. And that will affect people, and then their door opens to help them out. Because the last thing the country needs with so much violence and aggression is a culture of people jamming animal proteins down their throat. I mean, it's hard enough getting by in the world now. So I think the importance of what you're doing it's really at an all-time high, hon. It truly is.
Gil, I'm so glad you came right out the gate and dialed right into the simplicity. The simplicity, the ease, that's what this is all about. And there's so many questions that come from all of that noise that you've just described. And to bring people back to the quintessence of the simplicity of the body functioning, not needing to know what telomeres are or all of these other things that are flying around. One of the things actually in that mix that comes up a lot and a large part of the community would like to know about is specifically around oxalates. In fact, I think I remember back in the day, it was starting to become a trend, and we would talk about how suddenly doctors were telling people not to have spinach or Swiss chard or avocados because they were high in oxalates. So now people are afraid to eat a lot of these.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, any thoughts on that in terms of the cleansing lifestyle?
Yeah, for sure. When people start getting specific about fruits and vegetables, to me, it's a sign they're going down the wrong path. There's no way anyone is going to sell that raw spinach is bad for the body. Doesn't matter what's in it. That type of micronutrient work is nonsense. Like, spinach is fine. Now, if you read Norman Walker, Victor Kulvinskas, a lot of people will tell you that when you heat oxalates, when you cook them, then they can create inorganic calcium deposits in the joints and lead to arthritis. So whether or not that's true, I know Walker is really strong there about oxalates when they're heated are extremely harmful to the joints and the bones. In the raw state, they're totally fine. They're totally fine. Like, we got guys talking about lectins, and they're picking apart like raw food, like, oh, you can't eat zucchini because they have this specific thing in them. See, and I think that's all nonsense, because apples have arsenic, but they don't have enough arsenic to make arsenic poison. See, there are little elements in food that in the amounts they're in food, they're totally fine. If you get too much of it, it becomes a poison. See, so arsenic in a big amount can kill you, but in an apple seed or in an apple, in the minute amounts it is, it's fine. If we made anyone drink a quart of wheatgrass juice, now wheatgrass juice is a fabulous medicine. 1 or 2 ounces are fabulous. But if we ask someone at gunpoint to drink a quart of wheatgrass juice, it's going to kill almost anyone who would do that, if we, including us, because it's too much medicine. You see? medicine in big amounts becomes poison. So if people are just eating spinach, there might be something under a microscope. You look at oxalates and you put them directly into a cell, and you might see bad things happen. But in the minute amounts they appear in food, especially raw food, there's no way anyone's going to tell me that spinach and raw greens that are edible are harmful because some specific element happens to be in them. So that it doesn't go with the universality of cure. So I don't worry about it. I don't worry about it. Same way they talk about the good stuff, like, oh, eat cooked tomatoes because of lycopene. And they're telling men to eat cooked tomato sauce for their prostate. So you have all these guys throwing tomato sauce and everything they eat. This is true. It's nonsense. Okay, the specifics in foods are not what create the health. It's the general means. They enter the body with an alkaline pH. They leave the body. They pull matter as they leave like a magnet. That makes them healthy. That's what spinach does, especially when it's raw. Kale. There's all this stuff that kale ruins your thyroid, right? There's stuff in kale, stuff in cabbage. You know that thing that don't eat kale and cabbage, they kill your thyroid? I juice a minimum, this is, everyone who knows me knows this, a minimum of 8 heads of lacinato kale a day. And I've done that for 30 years. If anyone's thyroid should be blown out, it's me. I should weigh 800 pounds and be a slob of mush. You know, it's nonsense. When we put greens under the microscope, of course we're going to see little elements that might not be perfect in large amounts. Who cares? Brazil nuts are loaded. There's a famous poison. If I said it, it's a poison. It's not arsenic. It's something else. But they're loaded with it. But in order for that to hurt you, you'd have to eat about 65 pounds of Brazil nuts. So I think the oxalate, what's that?
Cyanide, maybe. Is it cyanide?
Yeah, I think that's it. So I don't pay attention to all this info coming out about don't eat this vegetable because it contains this. And that works the other way too. You'll see a lot of research tell people eat a bunch of salsify because it has some polysyllabic element that's good for your cirrhosis. You know, that kind of is nonsense. We don't play that game.
Even
if you want to
drink red wine because it has resveratrol, but you're still acidifying yourself with red wine, but so what about the resveratrol?
Correct. That's exactly what I mean, because we want to keep in that mindset of universal cure. Clean cells live long. Cells that aren't encumbered are healthy, vital cells. Life is fabulous when we're free of trauma, be it cellular trauma or be it emotional trauma. Life is a mess when we're hanging on to that which doesn't serve us. It's not beautiful because we contain everything. It's beautiful because we're free and clear. It's not traumatic because we lack. It's traumatic because we hold that which is not good for us. If we stick to that, all this nonsense about these polysyllabic elements in food becomes unimportant, which it is unimportant.
You just crystallized it all right there. That is everything. That is gold. Okay, so another popular one that comes up sort of in the same vein is food allergies and seasonal allergies. And the question is, essentially, will seasonal allergies go away with long-term tissue cleansing?
I'll tell you something funny. This is funny. This is happening now. One of my really good clients, who's a cardiologist, just reached out this week to buy your home colonic thing. She just reached out this week, and she was telling me she just did the interview, I think. She came to me because she had a ton of allergies and a bunch of other stuff, and the allergies were gone in a month. Allergies basically are just an inherent weakness or imperfection in the body, where the body is highly susceptible to certain elements. When you cleanse, you will most definitely see a loss of these things. I've seen it many, many times, especially with the hay fever pollen stuff. That whole sneezy thing that happens, it goes away, as is, and this one to me is exciting. You work with people who are, say, Irish or Welsh. Wendy Jones, remember Wendy that worked with me? People who can't get the sunlight, they burn. You know, the whole ginger hair type person burns. When they get into the cleansing, I hear this all the time. What happens is they overcome their inherited energy, and now the sun, which was basically creating allergic responses in them, is their friend, and they can tan. And we always come back to clean cells bring you to an indigenous space. Whatever humans were supposed to be doing, this lifestyle will bring you there. Allergies can definitely, unequivocally go away by doing the work. I've seen it many times. It's one of the easier things to fix.
Yeah, I remember you used to always say, nobody should be allergic to springtime.
Exactly. Like people who are avoiding the sunlight, that's only because the body is in such a poisoned state. What the sun does, it extracts poisons from your gut and liver. It's trying to heal you. So when you go in the light, it's pulling these things out of the body. If people are holding too much, what stays on the body is the skin cancer. So the skin cancer is basically toxins in the liver and gut ending up on the skin from an incomplete extraction by the light. The reason it's incomplete is because the person is holding too much. You know, if you study indigenous people in Africa, the Zulu tribesmen, anywhere you go, the Moros in the Philippines, people don't get skin cancer. They're living in the light. See, so as we step into the lifestyle, we become more indigenous. And it's fabulous to see people who were so light sensitive be able to sunbathe.
I love how you put that. The universal cure and the becoming indigenous are two major takeaways so far. There are many more, but those are big gems. I had the same thing happen to me with the sun. I was like Wendy, I burned in the sun, and now I live all day in the sun. Just
100%.
And the other thing that you often would say about allergies was sometimes it would be the straw that breaks the camel's back, like with the peanuts, for example.
Yeah, the peanut thing to me, I'll tell you why the peanut thing is so, there are three things, I think, in the modern world where we need to look at what's going on subtly. The vaccinations tie into this too, with the COVID vaccines and all these vaccines. People have to understand there are things you can do that are very harmful that are not going to kill you Tuesday. It may be 6 years, 7 years, 8 years down the road. Now, I'm 67 years old. I go back to when I was in grammar school, and kids used to argue all the time, what's the best peanut butter? Jif, Skippy, or Peter Pan? Everybody ate peanut butter, everybody. Right? Now, you bring peanuts into a school and you're the equivalent of Don Corleone. Like, nobody can eat a fucking peanut. Like, it's like this dead food. Every other kid in the city is going to drop dead if they sniff a peanut. Now, what happened? See, and this is the subtlety and the insidiousness of toxicity. We weakened our lineage. Something was going on in the 50s and 60s. Either it was a drug people were taking, it could have been a pesticide that was introduced, it could have been things put in normal food, or it just could have been decades of improper living. And we talk about this all the time. The sperm and the egg that create a baby give to that baby their health or lack of health. So now we get into 2000s and every other kid is dropping dead from a peanut. That didn't exist when we were young. It's not that something happened to the peanuts. It's that something happened to the humans. So that peanuts, which are a tricky food, now can trigger kids into shock. That didn't happen. The other one is autism. When I was a kid, the spectrum meant the rainbow. That's all it meant. Up in the sky, full spectrum lights. Remember full spectrum? Now, every other kid is bouncing off the spectrum. What happened? Why are there so many children having this ailment? That comes from the error we made 30, 40 years ago. It could be some of the old vaccines back in the 70s. It could be chemicals in food. It could be too much radiation. It could be a lot of things. But believe me, the reason we have autistic kids today is because of the error of decades ago. And this is the result. Women not being able to have children. It used to be back in the day, if you were under 40, you got together, boom, 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 the woman got pregnant. Now it's like doing a triple lutz to get a 35-year-old woman to have a baby from sex. What's going on? See, where does this sterility come from? Is it something that started last year? No. It's things that we did decades ago that are now coming back to haunt us. And that's the work of Eric. That's the cleansing life. You can live like a pig and get to 40. A lot of athletes do it. What happens when you get to 45, 50? Down you go. And that's how it works. So one of the things we want to grip, especially because your audience is young, you guys are very important, because if and when you have children and you teach them properly, you feed them well, and the people your children marry hopefully are doing the same thing. As the generations pass, we alter humanity. So I think the generation you're speaking to right now is like the bedrock of the future, because if they connect with people of like mind, we change the state of the children. Because it's so sad now to see all these kids, they're on the spectrum, they have ADD, everybody's clapping for people. You look at all the confusion people have in their lives, body positivity, all these things, which are really painful for people to have to live through. It's very sad. And it's all coming because of errors we made in our past. So that's why what you're doing, you want to understand, for everyone out there, especially if you're under 40, yes, you're doing this for yourself. It enhances your life tremendously, but you are also doing it for the future humanity. It's a really great, noble thing to take on.
Yeah, beautifully put. And to that end, the quantity of accumulation of waste, I think it's a very common thing that comes up, like this concept that we can be tissue cleansing so much and yet still have so far to go. How someone can use colon irrigation for years and still require it even when eating cleanly. Would you speak to that a little bit?
Oh, 100%. Something new came. I haven't talked to you about this because I just found out about it recently. It's very exciting. And for people out there that live in big cities in the US and all over the world, this one's a biggie. The first element with the colonic thing, there's basically now, I used to say 2 elements, now I think there's 3. The first one is, as we've discussed, inherited energy. If you come from Europe, if you come from most parts of the world, you look at the lineage and how your lineage ate and lived. So if you're Polish, if you're Swedish, if you're Hungarian, even a lot of Latin American countries, even Mexicans, the amount of non-edible food that's in your lineage, it goes back for decades, centuries, millenniums. By the time we get born in the 21st century, we're mutants. Whether we know it or not, we're physically mutated. We're trying to take on, with what we're doing here, the natural indigenous diet of humanity. So you think of where modern humans are dietetically, how off it is. That's our lineage. That's in us at birth. We're trying to go back to the beginning of time and do the proper diet. We need help. And anyone who thinks they don't is crazy. And that's why the colonic thing is huge. And then the other factor is, and this one's a big one, nobody starts this at 4 years old. Even if you're 25, which is very young, the error from birth to 24 is in your cells. It's in your cells. In fact, these medical doctors have done these tests where now they're finding in the modern world, they see people starting to age and go the wrong direction as young as 26. See, so if you begin this in your mid-20s, you have to undo all those years of not knowing, which were not your fault. None of us were taught, you see? So that's the other factor. But this next new thing is revolutionary. And as a colonic therapist who looks at this tube, and you know this, hon, you could do this 2-3 times in 10 days, and it's just going crazy every time. It's like, what is going on? This will shed the light that, to me, it's revolutionary stuff. And it's allowed me to now quietly and peacefully know that the work we're doing with the cleansing, the mechanical cleansing, is on point. And here it is. A group of GI doctors in Italy did this longitudinal study. It took them 3 years. My friend who lives in Italy brought it to me. And they came up with this discovery. It used to be believed that if you lived in a polluted city, they studied Milan. We could look at Manhattan, New York, lots of polluted cities in the country, right? If you live in a polluted city, the biochemical poisons that you breathe in from the air, the carbon monoxide from cars, the chemical cleaners in your apartment, the fake heat, the dust, the array of things that are being sprayed around, right? We all, the insecticides and all these other types of chemicals, the radiation residue, whatever it may be, the mold and spore. It used to be believed that they floated through the blood and lodged in the liver. And these two guys noticed that if that were the case, when they checked people's blood and liver enzymes, it should have been way worse than it was. So they did this research and came to this conclusion. They said, no, it's not in the blood, it's not in the liver. The reason people can live in the presence of such pollution, here we go, this is a biggie. The more polluted your city, the body actually forms feces, poop, to trap these micropoisons and pull them into the colon to prevent them from getting into your liver and your bloodstream and your vitals. So since the colon is meant to deal with garbage, the more polluted your city is, the body keeps creating poop to magnetically connect to the micropoisons in your environment to prevent you from getting sick. And they said that's why they did x-rays on people from Milan and saw these constantly full bowels. They gave them enemies. They changed them to a vegan diet. And as much work as they did, they kept having to flush them because they were living in one of the most polluted cities in the world. So what they did is they took the same bunch of people and brought them down to Sicily, which is a paradise. Gave them the same diet, checked the bowels, and the bowels were like 20% as full. Because the body didn't have to create poop to encapsulate all the chemical poisons they were taking in. And I have to say, and I'm sure you agree on, when you look at what comes out of the body when you're living in a modern city, I watch myself. I mean, I weigh 130 pounds. It's insane. And it has to be that these Italian gentlemen are correct. And what I've seen with people, that if you're in a polluted place, every time you breathe in skeeve, your body creates poop to keep that skeeve from hurting you. Problem is now your colon's full. So when we do this work, we're not only working the food, but we're actually keeping the biochemical pollutants out of the system because they're in the poop, which we're removing. That to me has been one of the most revolutionary things I've learned in the last 5 years. And it explains a lot, sitting at that table, watching some people like 6-7 pounds of matter 3 times a week. They're eating once a day. They're built like you. Something's up. It's not just old matter. Something's at play. And when I read this study, I was like, there we go. Which then tells us if we're living in a polluted city, and what city isn't with all the radiation now, the 5G towers, the use of colonics in your machine now are twice as important as they were before we knew this information. So now more than ever, living in a city like Manhattan, am I committed to people, begging people, please do the colonic action. Please either put one in your house or buy the thing you're selling. Because if you're into this heavy, if you're passionate and in love with the lifestyle, in my opinion, you cannot succeed without one of the two. You cannot. At some point, you will hit the wall. And I know that's radical to say that. But I think for the bulk of people, you can't succeed without it. You know, they talk about in probability and statistics that if 3% of something exists in ProbStat, it doesn't count. In other words, if the unemployment rate in the big city is 3, that's considered none. It's kind of that way with this. Someone's going to say something like, well, I know this guy who lives in Mesopotamia and he lives on kiwi fruit and he doesn't do colonics and he's fabulous. There's also a lot of people walking around with 7 fingers, but not enough of them for them to affect statistics. Trust me, if you have a couple of ailments or a couple of little physical issues, and you're getting into this as a young or middle-aged adult, and you're doing the diet to the degree Natalia speaks of, the degree I speak of, or even more so, And you're going to try to succeed without having some type of home cleansing unit or without going to a colonic space often or even semi-often, you have no chance. That doesn't mean it's going to hurt you in the next year, 2, 3, but our goal is to be clear and vital and proactive and happy well into our advanced years. It's not going to happen. Not if you're in a polluted city. And now I'm 100% convinced of that.
Thank you,
Yes.
first of all, for walking us through it and sharing the details of it. That is absolute mind blow. And it explains so much because, I look at, I just myself, 8,000 colonics I've calculated I've done in my lifetime. And yet, I'm not stopping anytime soon because
100%.
I'm having one
even though
a
it
day.
sounds nuts, I just know it's the truth. I mean, that it is. And so I would never bring this up ever unless I was speaking in a group like this where people are in the box, because it's too radical. But for the people out there that are putting in all the effort, Al Gore's title, An Inconvenient Truth, like, it sucks that it's this way, but this is the way it is. So if you're having issues, I'm going to answer a question for everyone listening. You didn't get hit by a bus. You didn't get hit with a baseball bat. You didn't get shot, burned, or stabbed. You didn't fall off a flight of steps or off a mountain. Nothing happened to you external. You don't feel good. Here's your answer. You're not getting enough colonics. You're not doing enough home cleanses. You need to pick it up. Or you're not getting them at all. That just answered 90% of everybody's questions without even knowing the questions.
Yeah, it does, because people get into the cleansing lifestyle and they'll wonder why everything's not perfect yet. Well, because there's all this accumulation plus all the newness that's happening in living time, like what you just described. It reminds me a bit of like the mucoid plaque that the body creates when we take things in that's protecting the tissue from the acidic substances. But the migration of all that waste and how the body's so porous and how Alzheimer's, for example, can be connected to the accumulation, got stuck in the bowel.
It's really sad because Johns Hopkins back in the early 2000s did a huge study on Alzheimer's disease. It was in the Times, it was everywhere, and they said it was in the paper. In fact, I remember we discussed this. It said they've come to the conclusion that over 95% of people who get Alzheimer's disease, when they did autopsies, their brains were full of encrusted, cemented protein waste. They identified it as protein waste. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, this is great. The medical field is going to come up with something. And then the next sentence was, how and where this protein waste got there is not yet known. What does that mean? So what happens is the body will collect matter in the bowel. If it's unfit for human consumption, it sits in the bowel. In order to keep the bowel open after a while, and it could be a long while, the matter will be melted down by the system. But what happens, it then starts going through the entire organism and it lands in all different places. So a spot on the liver is 10 years ago's unpassed matter from the bowel. A growth on the pancreas, a bump on the thyroid is 15 years ago's unpassed waste. It collects. And remember, the body's like sponges. It's not like cement little rooms. It's not Manhattan mini stories. The matter permeates. It goes from the bowel after a while through the entire organism. Hence, people have sick organs that actually are only sick because the bowel wasn't taken care of. There's no such thing as fabulous colon, bad, fill in the blanks with the name of an organ. Doesn't exist. Guy's got a great colon. His kidneys are fucked up though. Doesn't exist. If the colon's clean, everything else is going to be in a nice space. And gastroenterologists use a term. It's a gut ailment. There's a term they use that they don't even understand is the only sickness. It's the only sickness that exists on the planet. Okay, we'll see if you can guess. It's a new term. Didn't exist when I was in my 30s. It's the last 20 years. But it actually isn't specific sickness. It's every sickness. Leaky gut.
I was just going to say, yeah, leaky gut.
Leaky gut means, according to doctors, that there's poop permeating out of your colon and poisoning your other organs. Newsflash, that's every single sickness on the planet. Brain tumors, you name anything, Graves' disease, Bright's disease, heart attacks, is all matter and gas permeating the bowel, going someplace else. So leaky gut is actually the universal sickness. Mm-hmm. See, and when we talk about, well, I have a problem, my doctor told me my thyroid's sluggish, what does that have to do with my colon? Your transverse colon that runs across your belly button, when it gets too full, matter will permeate up and it will bother the thyroid. It will hit the thyroid, it will hit the base of the lungs. That's why a lot of people who are constipated can't take deep breaths. You'll hear a lot of people when they cleanse talk about how their deep breathing improves so much because the space under the lungs is now clear. It's like we took a brick out from under a trampoline. So now the trampoline can do that. See, that's what the lungs and the stomach do. Reflux. Reflux happens because there's a brick under the left part of the colon between the belly button and the pancreas. It's full with cement. The stomach's over here. So when the stomach tries to do this, the full matter under the stomach hits everything in the up direction. It comes up your throat. So reflux is not a stomach issue. It's a colon issue creating a stomach symptom. You see? Headaches are not a head issue. The right corner of the intestine, called the cecum, C-E-C-U-M. In acupuncture, they'll tell you the cecum rules the skull. So everything that goes on in your body from your throat through your head happens because your right corner is holding, and Natalia can tell you this, everyone who's gotten colonics and done cleanses knows, when you dump that right corner, that's that part where it feels warm and it rushes out cathartically, and it's like a high. It's like an orgasmic high. And that's when people will say, oh my God, my head's clear. Oh my God, my ears are clear. Oh my God, my sinuses are clear. Because the right corner of the intestines rules the skull. So when we learn all these various points and whatnot, the healing of the intestine is at the center of everyone's issues. And to fix it without the mechanical cleansing, I wouldn't, I'm a sports gambler, I would not bet on that one. It really hard, really hard.
Oh, you're getting to the juicy stuff now. I'm loving this. Is the really, really good stuff, and I've got 1,000 questions I want to ask along those lines. One is, this takes us right into physiognomy and the facial issues, dark circles under the eyes, wrinkles around in the various places, mm-hmm. how that's linked to the colon as well. And
sure.
On the face.
There's a whole bunch of things. Some in the face are inherited from the lineage. They show that given organs in the lineage were off. And some, as we see as time passes, occur because of how the person's living. Now, the famous one I've used for decades, but only because it works. It's not personal. If we look at John Travolta, the actor, and if you look at the shape of John Travolta's head in Saturday Night Fever, it was thin and shaped like an eggplant. But if you look at it now, it's as big and round as a pumpkin. Well, what happened? Why would one's head go that way? It goes that way because the carbonic gas and the waste matter that the cells are holding distend the body. They blow it up with a pressure. Fred Bishop talks about reverse pressure. It's like this in there. It's tight and holding. And so everybody goes, they get like this, they get wide. You see, his head widens. Now, in the specifics of the face, there's a whole bunch of things. Like if you look at a lot of, happens more to women, but happens to men too. You look at a lot of women in their 20s and 30s, and the tissue on the bone here is very tight. And now you look when they get 50s, 60s, and they start to get the, that comes down, this stuff, it starts going there. That's an overwhelmed small intestine. You'll see in a lot of older folks, really older folks in their 80s, the bottom lip turns down and that old person thing that comes down like this, that's an overwhelmed bowel. We'll see people have deep, deep lines from here to here. Remember the guy, Robert Shapiro, the lawyer who defended O.J. Simpson? He had these deep, like almost like somebody took an etcher's thingy, a sculptor's thingy, and put lines. The inside lines show overwhelmed lung function. The lungs are clogged, they're hurting. The outside ones that come around show an overwhelmed liver. When we see people, their mouths get pinched together. And it's interesting, like I've looked at it, done a lot of physiognomy work, Nishio Kushi, where he had pictures of people from the ages of 20 to 50, and you saw their face just morphing. You get this and do this, like a copy like this. That's an overwhelmed kidney, bladder, sex organ. The deep lines on the forehead, the deep etched lines, one, I forget which is alcohol toxicity. One is gas and fermentation. One is too much protein. And I remember you said once, son, it was perfect. We look at a lot of big macho men, weightlifter men, athletes, high protein guys, and they got that skull. You have the skull comes out like it's this big, thick, aggressive, rugged-looking jaw. The bones are popping out. It's excessively male. That's too much testosterone from too much protein. Brilliantly portrayed. I remember you saying this in the movie Beauty and the Beast, the cartoon, and the Gaston character. Remember, he was the white guy, the villain? And remember, he had that huge head with that skull. That type of head, if you look at Brooke Shields, the actress, when she was young, a point came, she got into her 40s, she hired a trainer and openly talked about eating like a tiger. She was eating protein around the clock. Look at her skull. What happened to her skull in the course of the next 5 years. It's a fascinating study. It looks like a guy. The jaw came out. This came out. It's this rugged, angry, intense look that literally morphed from her dietetic choices. And then the biggest one, of course, we know was Sanpaku. And everyone, you should have somebody take a photo of yourself. You're going to get a quick little eye read. In a healthy body, when your head is up straight and it's looking straight, your irises, the color part of your eye, should be in the middle of the eye where the top is slightly eclipsed by the eyelid and the bottom is slightly eclipsed by the bottom eyelid. If you see white underneath, when you're looking straight, as everyone knows, when a person expires, when a person dies, the eye goes up in the socket and all you have is a white space. So when you look straight, if you see white underneath the bottom of your iris, meaning there's a white space between the bottom of the iris and the lid, that's the slow, very slow, again, doesn't mean Tuesday, but it's the beginning of death. See, and it's interesting, the studies on, it's called Sanpaku in Japanese healing. All murderers, all miscreants who commit lots of crimes, you look at blotter photos, they're always Sanpaku. All overweight people are Sanpaku. Drug addicts are Sanpaku. High protein people, I'm a big football fan. You look at a lot of athletes who are great athletes because they're stimulated by the meat. You look at them in interviews, they're dying on their feet because their eyes, there's white under the bottom. You're going to see as you step into this life, your eyes are going to go almondy. Healthy eyes have a shape like an almond. They're not big and round. You know Dr. Phil, the guy Oprah's friend, the shrink on TV? He's got that big round thing happening. That's a dying body because it's internal pressure. And the eyes go round. Healthy eyes are calm and almondy. And when you're looking straight, the top of the eye, you see no white. The bottom of the eye, you see no white. There are lines here. You see some men, they got a vertical. It's one deep, like etched. It looks real rugged and macho. That's an overwhelmed kidney from too much uric acid. And many times I've seen people lose that line to cleansing. It's fascinating to watch a person's face do that, especially if they're over 40 or 50, because no one expects to be able to do things to look better once you cross 50. And so to see people's faces lose all the puffiness and the lines, it's pretty fabulous.
I mean, what a relief, isn't it? When you realize you can fix your cosmetic
Sure.
issues by fixing it all
100%.
with and it also brings to mind Meniere's disease and vertigo and the ringing in the ears that a lot of people are experiencing.
Tinnitus.
I wonder if that's coming from the 5G or if that's from internal
I think what it is. I think it's kind of like both, that people are toxic. They're holding in the right corner. ear ringing and things like that. I've seen tinnitus go away about 3 or 4 times. What happens is, I think all the stuff, the phones, the internet, the 5Gs, take somebody who has issues in the cecum and then puts them over the top. And so now they have an acute symptom where before they would have had a moderate symptom. So I think the mix of the two is definitely present. But what I can say for sure, and again, I'm not selling this. You know me, and I'm not pushing for clients. I'm in Manhattan, you're in Miami. This isn't a hawking thing. It's just the truth. I do this because I've observed it. It is so common for people to come in with something going on in their head and 1 or 2 treatments and they're clear as a bell. It's uncontrovertible proof that the right corner of the intestine connects to the skull. Meniere's disease at its worst, people are not allowed to drive, they can faint, they can go insane. It's all the right corner of the intestine. There's 100%, no doubt about it. Unless it's from like an accident, some external force. If it isn't, it's the gut. So is floaters, where people see that black thing, in the eyes, they have like black dots. That's all the same deal.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So one of the things I'm seeing a lot lately is people who have intense blockages, sometimes twist in their colon. Sometimes they have a good portion of their colon that's been removed, or they've got severe ulcerative colitis, and they can't really approach the bowel cleansing the way we would like to.
I know it's tough.
Yeah.
Tough. I think what you got to do with people like that, it's tough. My heart goes out to people like that because it's such a long way back. You start them out, they drink a lot of water with aloe vera. They make tea from turmeric, and they do a lot of good cooked veggies. Steamed beets, baked beets, broccoli rabe is a really good one. Sauteed escarole, yams, potatoes, squashes, yucca, and you just kind of live off that. While you're doing that, there's I'm not a big supplement guy, but there's a great supplement. It's really a food more than a supplement. It's the purple algae from Japan that is one of the best anti-inflammatories in the market. It's called astaxanthin. It's a purple algae. The company is called Valasta, Valasta. They only make one product, astaxanthin. Get the basic one. It comes in a little spray bottle. You fill 4 capsules, take 4 capsules a day. For people in that dire straits, they should live on aloe vera water, turmeric tea, an array of cooked vegetables, even if you have to blend them, and take a lot of astaxanthin. Do that for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then try a colonic cleanse of some type. And at a certain point, we did it with a good friend of mine who had taught in the Himalayan Institute, the treatments will work. But unfortunately, they can't jump into the raw food when they're that off. It just wipes them out. It's very sad to see that. In terms of if they've had things cut, I wouldn't recommend doing something on myself if I were in this situation, but in terms of getting treatments, if they didn't give you a colostomy bag and you have at least 3.5 feet of intestines left out of the 5, I've had some real good success. He's become one of my best friends. He had colon cancer. They took out only 4 inches, but he's fabulous now 2 years later, fit as a fiddle. So if they didn't give you a bag, it can still be done delicately. I do not recommend doing that on oneself. But those are tough. But start with the cooked veggies. Beets are fabulous. Sauteed greens, okra, because of the slime. They get through without over cleansing. Astaxanthin, turmeric tea. Do that a couple weeks. Give it a shot. Also, frequency work. There's a big push now on Royal Rife's work. There are a lot of people bringing it back into the game. Look into frequency work. Machines that alter your frequency can help inflammation a ton.
And what about just as a colon hydrotherapy professional, manipulating and moving when there are blockages? Is there anything special that you'd recommend on the table or at home?
I'd have to see the individual. Like there are people where I thought this isn't going to work, and they hung in there, and it did. I one case, the girl came in, they told her the only thing left for you was the total removal of your colon, and she hung in there, and now she's fine. Has a unit in her house in Long Island. So everyone is fixable. It's hard to say specifically. You don't force the water in if someone's really hyperinflamed and blocked. You may end up just doing like 4 enemas. Like if I put the water in someone and it just angrily comes back at me, usually I stop, let them sit. And if I have to do that 3 times and that's the whole first step, so be it.
And
it's tough for people.
Maybe
what's that, hon?
Castor oil packs, prepping with castor oil.
Oh, yeah. Castor oil packs are huge for people in that situation because they have to try to open it up. The other thing, in New York, we have 2 guys who do this. I don't know where you're going to find people outside Manhattan, but there is something called visceral massage. And what that is they do it through the skin. Obviously, they don't put their hand on your throat. But what they're actually doing is massaging your colon. It's not a massage of the muscles or the fascia, it's the organs. So they're pressing into the organs and trying to open up spots in the organs. There are 2 guys in Brooklyn who do this. It's pretty fabulous. Works on people whose lungs are clogged, bowels, liver. Like it's really special work.
Visceral massage.
Yeah, no, goes right into the organ. If I had a bowel that messed up, I would give something like that a shot. And I would also, to be honest, if you're really suffering, Arnold Ehret has that great quote. Now, it's an extreme quote, but the germ in it, you fast until it kills you or cures you. So if you can't eat and nothing's working, just get by on liquids, try getting some type of elimination through manipulation. And once you start eliminating, you can be healed. Because if you just keep putting things in and nothing comes out and you feel like you're dying, it's just more behind the 8 ball. See, and that's why what you're doing is so important, because the point is the more people that get into this the less people are going to end up like what you're asking. You see? It is very hard to say to somebody sometimes, the horses have escaped, we can't close the barn door. Sometimes people have been so ravaged, it's kind of tough. It's very sad.
And the medical industry has to make their numbers, their monthly quotas. They want their
course. In there. Especially now, they get money for drugs. One thing, I don't know if you've noticed this, most of my clientele are young women. You go back 5 years and almost no one was using an IUD. Now, every single young woman who comes here, even if there's no man in their life, has an IUD. I asked a bunch of these young women, what gave you this idea for an IUD? And it's the gynos, because the gynos are getting stipends. So they're pushing this on women. And it's a horrible thing to have in your body. Don't do that. Can I say something a little coarse here? Since your audience is mostly women, this is a good joke, but it's a passionate truth. In terms of IUDs, birth control pills, diaphragms, Norplant, where they stick all this stuff, no guy is that good a fuck to warrant doing that to your body. And I'm saying that as a man. Do not put these god-awful things in your system. It's just bad across the board. And now these doctors are getting stipends for doling them out. I hear it 5 times a month. I always ask women, what's your menstrual cycle like? Oh, I have an IUD. You go back 3 years, I never heard that, ever.
There should be a documentary on this. This should be the new OxyContin story.
Yes.
Thank you for being so raw and direct. I think it needs to be said. The question is, can Gil share about emotional old story releases while colon cleansing? Has he experienced this with his clients on the table? While most clients are cleansing for specific illnesses or overall physical health, what is his observation on emotional, spiritual changes?
Oh, yeah. I've seen people in the middle of releasing. It's usually the same one. There's this deep cathartic cry happens. And they'll say to me, look, I'm just feeling really sad and happy at the same time. I said, look, just let it go. Don't hold back. It's not that rare where you'll see people just start to burst into tears. And I always ask them, do you have a specific memory in your mind? They said, well, mentally, no, but I have the same exact feeling that I did when my mother told me I was fat, or when my boyfriend cheated on me with my best friend. Like there's the same feeling they had when something traumatic happened in their life that was buried in the cells. It's not that rare. It's you'd be surprised. And it's always overwhelming to me because it's not something I'm looking for. but you can see the sincerity of it when it happens right in front of you. It's very interesting. Happens with a lot too of people in their 60s. When they get in deep and they start losing weight, it really starts working. They'll talk about having a lot of traumatic stuff come up. They're remembering things in a moment. Like there's a big release. Wow, I just got this memory of something from 1960. It's really interesting stuff. But yes, that does happen.
I mean, the spirit opening up is really what this is all about. That's basically what you led me to all those years ago, is that like, here's what life should feel like. Here's what your spirit should be, and it's been covered over. It's the freedom that is important. So.
Oh, 100%. And that's why I always say, if I had to sum up this whole life in one sentence, why did we get into this? It's this: clean cells can't be mean. Clean cells can't be mean. If you take this lifestyle to the extreme, you're going to be a fabulous human because you have no choice. Clean cells are happy, they're tolerant, they're empathic, they're effective. You see, so when you really come down to it, that's what we're looking to do when we get into this. We want to leave a blueprint, an imprint that's fabulous because our cells have no choice. They're too clean. See, I mean, if someone's angry and judgmental, and, you see sometimes in the internet, people just judging people for being non-vegan or judging people for being non-raw food, or you're programmed, you're part of the matrix, and all these evil, angry stuff. And even though the essence of what they're saying may have truth in it, you can tell by the tone that these are not clean, healthy people, because if they were, they would never have that much anger attached to their messages.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's the ease, it's the love, it's the conductivity of the life force among one another that's moving through us. And
correct.
I'm so grateful that I got to tap into that, because I don't know what would have become of me otherwise. I don't even want to think about it, frankly. Gil, you've been so generous with your time today, and all the insights and stories you shared with us, and the research, which was profound. I know I speak for all of us when I just thank you so deeply, and I hope we can maybe do this again sometime. I know it's
I would love to. You know what always happens? I feel like we got like 10% of what we could have said. Maybe 10%. So whenever you want to do it, let me know.
No, I'd love it. And I just bless you so dearly and embrace you from here.
Likewise. I'm very moved and flattered. This truly was. And for everybody out there, this is not a ploy. There's no agenda here. We do this because this information is in such a minority. It's so buried. It's so hidden. You guys, you're part of a group where you get it. You're in the loop. And it's just really important to encourage people and get them to realize how important this is, not just for yourselves, but the people around you as you affect them, which you will, and what you do with your children going forward. So it's always thrilling and moving to me that people listen and they trust, because this is radical stuff. It's not written up in books. There's no research backing it up. So thank you sincerely. And I will do this again whenever you want.
Oh, it's been perfect. But thank you. It has been absolutely perfect. Gil, thank you so much. And until next time.
I'm very moved. It was great. Anytime you want. Seriously.
Thank you.